Yeah, it should be pretty shocking.
Okay, should we get started? What do we think? I think we can hop in, and if anybody's late, they can just join us where we're at. But thank you, everybody who's watching on right now. The wind just shut a door in my house. Thank you, everybody who's joining. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dory Sumner, and I'm the manager of programs and development for Astoria Park Conservancy, and I'll be facilitating our panel tonight. Before we get started, I wanted to briefly acknowledge that Astoria is situated on the occupied territory of the Eastern Shoshone, Bannock, Northern Arapaho, Cheyenne, and many other indigenous people who lived here in the past, present, and future as well on these lands. I wanted to thank Matt Sykes and Walker Christensen so much, who are our panelists tonight. We're so excited to have you both here. For those of you who aren't familiar with Astoria, we opened the hot springs this past September with a really incredible show of support and input from the local community. And Astoria is comprised of a 100-acre surrounding park, as well as the hot springs, which we have open now. And we really envision the park to be a place that will be designed by and for the community, and a space where people can create connections with each other and nature. So as I said earlier, tonight we have Matt and Walker. Matt Sykes is the founder of Regeneration Projects and a purpose-driven business and hot springs expert, as well as Walker Christensen, who is principal architect with DHM Design and the designer of Astoria Hot Springs. Matt and Walker, do you mind just telling us a bit more about yourselves and your connection to Astoria?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt. I'll let you go first.
Thank you both. Yeah, look, I'd also like to acknowledge those First Peoples' connection to the Astoria area. I'm just looking on the website before, and it is a practice here in Australia that's very much building, that we acknowledge our First Nations communities and that heritage, as well as the waves of migration that have shaped and influenced the places that we work and live. So yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge the Bannock, Blackfeet, Crow, Cross Ventura and Shoshone people who have that connection to the broader Jackson Hole region, but also, yeah, all of the paths of migration that have followed and that lead us up to that moment that brings us together here to talk about water. I had the opportunity to meet Walker and a couple of his colleagues, and also Paige, who's part of the Astoria team in growing this amazing initiative. And to be honest, as soon as I heard about this, I fell in love with it. And I have to declare a little bit of a bias because my background's in landscape architecture, and I think this is an excellent project where landscape architects have come in and facilitated the emergence of a really interesting project. And it's interesting just on a first impression in that it weaves together this community well-being, but also conservation and hot springs culture. So yeah, I'm just really thankful to be here and yeah, be in this conversation.
Thanks, Matt.
Hi, I'm Walker Christensen, and I'm a landscape architect with DHM Design in Durango, Colorado. I work on a large variety of projects, from hot springs to public parks and trails to national parks. Some hot springs that I've worked on are Ouray Hot Springs, Glenwood Hot Springs. We did a master plan for Zion Hot Springs between St. George and Zion National Park. Twin Peaks Lodge, and our most recent one that we've been involved with in kind of the visualization and kind of into construction observation. It was Durango Hot Springs, which was lucky that it was in our own community. We work all over the country, so it was nice to have a project that close to us, and it kind of illustrates that there are a lot of hot springs throughout the West. I've been working on multiple projects at Zion National Park for the past 6 years, and a lot of it deals with visitor experience and creating new fee stations, trying to manage the huge hordes of people that are coming into national parks now, and making sure that there's still can be a good visitor experience. Worked on Emerald Pools Trail, Watchman Campground, and we're looking at redoing the whole south entry at Springdale and South Campground as well, just to name a few of the projects I've been working on there. And I have a strong affinity for small towns in the West. I've worked on a lot of projects in very small communities, and whether they're planning projects or park design or streetscape or hot springs or whatever it is, I really love working in small communities. I'm from a small town, and I think the impacts of projects are like really tangible and really immediate. You can tell that you're really helping people right away. My involvement with Astoria goes back to 2015, where we got a request for qualifications from the Trust for Public Lands, and I was just finishing up with my design for Uray Hot Springs in Colorado, and we got the RFP, and it was really, the history of Astoria was really interesting, and we just decided we need to go after this project. This could be so much fun, and I'm glad we did, because it's a great community, and the way people were involved and connected to Astoria Hot Springs and the history that people told us, it was really rewarding. And so we interviewed with our design team was DHM Design as the lead landscape architects and hot springs site designers. We had Cloud H2O, who did the mechanical and kind of the aquatic engineering, and then Anderson Hallis Architects, who did the bathhouse. And so we won the project, started working on it, working with the community on the design of the hot springs resort area, which is only 5 acres, and doing master planning for the overall park, which is 95 acres. So, looking at both scales, which was really interesting and super unique to anywhere to have that opportunity. So yeah, we're the only thing that hasn't gone that well is I haven't been able to get out there after construction was completed because of the way things are happening right now in the world. But I hope to get up there soon and get to see how it all turned out in person. I've seen some beautiful pictures, and I've seen some really fun posts. So that's kind of how I'm connected to it.
Thanks, Walker. Well, we'll get you up here sometime soon. Just one moment, I wanted to call out to our guests here. If you have any questions for Matt and Walker, we're going to be doing a Q&A at the end of the panel here. So please just, if any questions come up, just add them to the chat, and we'll get to some of those at the end. So I just wanted to bring it back to Astoria Park Conservancy. We're an organization that's really deeply focused on health and well-being. I was wondering if the two of you could speak to the health, both physically and mentally, that are related to spending time at hot springs.
Absolutely, and it's one of those. I mean, we're all so conscious of our well-being and our collective well-being at this point in time, and I think what's unique about water is that it connects us all, and in the way that through some of my experience, so I guess from landscape architecture I got into business and then tourism, and then worked with Peninsula Hot Springs, which is the leading operator here just outside of Melbourne, Australia. And the way that when we were developing the wellness program there, that would, I guess, enable people to not just sit and relax in the pool, but also do activities around it, like short walks, the kinds of things that are available around Astoria, is that the hot springs really position your body and the mind in the perfect place to heal itself. So Brooke, one of my colleagues, that's exactly how he would describe it. And so once you let yourself decompress, you can, when I was guiding experiences, you'd often see people that are coming in from, really stressful lifestyles, and they would just slowly decompress. So the physical, side of things, we would run experiences where older generations of people would come in and be part of managing their arthritis, their general mobility and movement, and then encourage them to move between the hot and cold water to increase circulation through their body. And then I guess for others, practicing the, forest bathing or walking practices alongside the bathing. It means that, there's oils and things out in the environment and atmosphere. When we're breathing those in, they're a way of our body basically, boosting its immune system. But at the start of the call, we were talking about hot and cold experiences, and part of the link to well-being that I love, both from a physical and from a mental perspective, is this hot and cold or contrast therapy that's common in hot springs. So I guess one of the great examples of that, and this was connected to some global research that I did, but I was over in Guangdong province in China. This is in 2019. And there was a hotel resort there called Bishwan Hot Springs. And there was a pool in the shape of a yin and yang symbol. And the hot was around 45 degrees Celsius, which is, you might have to help with the conversion there, Dory. It was, I don't know, I'll do it. So 113
Oh, wow.
Celsius. And then the other pool next to it, or the yin, was 46 Fahrenheit. So you were moving between the hot and cold. And the traditional Chinese medicine specialist, he said, okay, so you can do this for 5 minutes, 20 seconds in the hot, and then 10 seconds in the cold. And it was honestly the most alive that I think I've ever felt. But it's one of those things because that helps increase circulation so that the body can heal itself. But also the mental side of things is that it helps. It's like switching your computer on and off. It helps reset the body's equilibrium and its adrenal levels and these types of things. And the other aspect, which is equally important, is that connection with people and connection with nature. Many of us have felt, the deficiency when we haven't been able to do that through COVID and lockdown and different things. So, hot springs are one of those places that brings people together, and, you can have that feeling of being in harmony with everything around you. So I guess, there's that Western scientific side, but there's also, that deep, even spiritual side that's part of this hot springs culture.
Yeah, awesome. And just so our guests know, we do have an ultimate goal to add a cold plunge pool to Astoria here within the next couple years.
Yeah, I think one of the aspects that I really loved about the project was how the people were connected to the Astoria. And, this was Jackson's outdoor pool for so many years. It's where people learned to swim, where their families spent quality time together. And the connection was really so strong and so emotional. You can tell it. I mean, that has a big impact on health and well-being. And being able to be part of that environment where people are so happy and have that connection to outdoor activity. I mean, I think that's really very healthy for families and individuals. like Matt said, connection to nature and to healing. There are people that really need or want to come to all these different hot springs every week or every day. Some of the places I go, I see the same people there almost every single day, and I think it gives them the minerals and heat can help soothe their ailments. The pain relief, even if it's temporary, can improve your mental health. And that's a big part of the healing process. I think also there's the social component of it, friendly discussions, all of that. Just being with people has that mental part of the healing. Native Americans did believe that the hot springs were connection to Mother Earth and to nature, and that helped heal the body and mind. And so that's why they're considered sacred. The Native Americans were the first people at all of the hot springs in the West. They were using them first, and they kind of knew and respected the power of the healing power of what you got out of being in these. With the open space park, I think there's a huge opportunity to connect people back to the earth even more. And in that way, I think Astoria is really unique and really special in the whole world. Being adjacent to millions of acres of national forest and the Snake River, it provides the public a chance to experience the hot springs and nature on many levels. You can go down to the river, you can see the visual of the river, you can see the hot springs from the hiking trail, you get the visual of the steam, or even passing on the road or coming across the cool bridge. You're entering into this experience that's really pretty unparalleled in the United States anyway. So I think it's a lot about just that basic connectivity to nature and the gift that we have of these hot springs waters.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. So building off of that, we are super committed to making sure that Astoria is a space that is accessible to all people, being all races, ages, income level, gender, etc. Matt, I'm wondering if you can specifically speak to how diversity and inclusion can support a healthy and resilient space.
Yeah, well, look, I guess at a really essential level, we are all made up of water. So we've all got that common connection, regardless of the color of our skin or the, how many wrinkles we have on our face or so on. So, water is a beautiful connector. And I guess, these are meeting places, and regardless of generation or culture or, interest, outside of the water, it's something that we can all share and be part of. And I guess it's something that in my travels overseas, and also, locally here in Australia, they just have a really amazing way of bringing people together. And, you see the young kids, moving around and they don't feel the cold often. So they're moving into the cold pools, more quickly than some of the others. But I think sometimes, it brings people from parts of the community that wouldn't otherwise connect with each other. And I think the ripple effects of that are really hard to measure, but they are very tangible. You've got people that, from here in Melbourne, Peninsula Hot Springs as an example, there's people that, let's say, in their homelands or their where their cultural heritage is from, there might be neighbors, or there might be areas that could even be in conflict, but they're still sitting in the same pool and enjoying that space. And I think that's really, really powerful. But look, I think in terms of diversity and inclusion, we should also be mindful of the time that we're living in, something that is has shaken and is still shaking the world is this Black Lives Matter movement and this growing awareness of people of color and different ethnicities in the way that, our societies can disadvantage people from a systemic level. And so, where do you start? Well, in Australia, we've got a lot of efforts around reconciliation, often with our First Peoples as an example. And so we need spaces in our community where people can come together and feel safe and feel connected. They can be spaces for conversation, or they can be spaces for just being. So I think, as we all manage through this time of transition with COVID and this growing awareness about connection to the planet and connection to each other, then places like Astoria are places for healing and connection that then lay foundations for our future, whatever that is, and I think that's where it becomes exciting. So yeah, I just think it's one of those spaces that don't divide, and I think it's really amazing that the local community have somewhere like Astoria to be able to come to. And just to finish that thread that I was mentioning on the last, I noticed that you've got a pool down there on the river. So, even without a plunge, go and jump in your river. That's the best. That's the best way to do it.
Thank you so much for that, Matt. I really appreciate it. Walker, I was wondering if you could talk through your own experiences with this, and specifically how you ensured to create a diverse community vision for the hot springs when designing it.
Sure. Yeah, I think the planning and design process really tried to get representation from the cross section of people that live and work in the community. There were activities on the site. There were a mix of ages. We went to different locations in the county, different little communities within the county. And one of the biggest examples I can think of, and which was really fun, is we brought out the public art trailer to the high school. And on I think it was a Sunday in July 2016, there was a bunch of soccer games going on throughout the whole day. And the Latino community was heavily represented in those soccer games and in the activities. And so we brought the meeting to them, and we were able to take all of our, boards and drawings and everything outside, and we had an interpreter, and we were able to get a lot of valuable input on the desires for the future of the Hot Springs Park that day, from people who are normally underrepresented in these types of public processes. We found out that people wanted more large group kind of family picnic shelters, more places to hang out with friends and family, gathering places where you could go to the hot springs, but then you could go to the park and have a picnic and, make more of a day of it. And, it might be different waves of family and friends going into the hot springs at different times of day, but there was a way to kind of tie everybody to, that outdoor space and keep them around still. And I think that was really rewarding to approach it that way. And I think you do have to make that extra effort to get more diverse opinions. So I really applaud Astoria and Trust for Public Land for, taking that extra effort. We also want to make sure that pools are accessible to as many people as possible. And, that can be from, zero entry ramps into the kids' pool, double railings to help senior citizens get into the pool easier, lifts, making the pool deck grades very, very gentle and ADA accessible. So, it's about diversity and about diversity in age, and just making things accessible to as many people as we can.
Awesome. Thanks, Walker. So we've been talking about this 100-acre park that will be developed, and it'll include features like walking trails and interpretive signage, picnic pavilions like Walker just mentioned. Matt, I'm wondering if you can speak to the impact that having this natural area adjacent to the hot springs could have on increasing the benefits that families, individuals, friends, etc., would receive when visiting the area.
Yeah, well, this is where you're so lucky, with the location. Um, uh, the first thing that comes to mind is around the experience and the journeys that people will be able to create for themselves here, and then I'm sure there's calendar events that you'll be able to have at different points. But before I get to that, I'd just like to share for a moment. So the consultancy that I work for, Regeneration Projects, part of our work is to support projects and leaders in understanding the ripple effects of what they do in a more holistic sense. So, and I know that this is also not a commercially driven project, but often when we are creating these spaces, there are those goals. So I guess the way that we understand it is that each project has 5 different ways that it creates ripple effects. So it works through ecosystem restoration and biodiversity, promoting community well-being and happiness, cultural diversity and collaboration and innovation. And then there's an economic aspect to it as well, and we try and make that reciprocal or circular, so that it's not to use something like a coffee cup. You try to bring your own and then use it again rather than use and throw away. And then there's the 5th one is really critical in creating knowledge and knowledge of a place. So all of these things are happening, and these ripple effects are happening through Astoria and will continue to grow and happen. And the way that happens is through the layering. So the fact that you've got the conservation area means that you're creating space for wildlife and so many non-human life forms to thrive. And so that's an incredible gift. And the fact that the community is supporting that through philanthropy and other means is, it speaks a lot, to what the community values. And, then that creates the foundation for this place where people can come and connect and promote their well-being. And I guess that's where you start getting into the experiential sense. So I don't know, I like to think that if I was coming here, then I'd be allowing, you could do a quick trip if you had a couple of hours, or if you had half a day, then you'd be doing a picnic. You're going for a walk. Maybe there's someone that they could take you on a guided walk, or you'd be looking at interpretive signage, getting to know the place better, developing that appreciation, and even finding ways, to care, whether there's a tree planting day or whether there's a citizen science day. There might be like someone that runs a yoga retreat there, or a well-being retreat, and you go off and you do a hike, and then there's like a sunset or a sunrise yoga experience. Then you stop and you have this, beautiful picnic out there. So there's so many opportunities. Once you set the stage, there's so many opportunities that become possible. And so I think that's, that's what will evolve more in time that I see for this project.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're already starting to think about programs for this summer as well, which is really exciting. Walker, I'm wondering, when you did your community outreach, what was some of the feedback that you received when discussing this project with the community?
Yeah, I can share my screen and show you some of the things that people were interested in for the larger park space, and some of the feedback that we got.
Great.
All right, let me know if you can see that.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So this this was one of the pieces of input, and I thought this was just kind of fun because it involved like art, and I think the high school students did it, but they talked about some of their memories of Astoria and what they wanted to see in Astoria, but just kind of illustrating some of the different ways that we got public input. Here's another way of, we did imagery boards and let people kind of put red and green dots on what they liked and what they didn't. And we did this for the overall open space park as well. This is a photo in the public art trailer, and this was our interpreter. And you can just see how we were able to get all of our images up there and talk through it just with a little open house throughout the day. So that was fun. But I want to just show you kind of so this, this is a photo of the hot springs, almost complete, and that's about 5 acres. So here's our master plan that is for the resort area, the hot springs area, which was about 5 acres. And then this is the bigger picture. This is the 95 acres. And within that, this small little area right here is 5 acres for comparison. So just to give you a sense of scale, what you have access to is huge and just amazing amount of opportunity. And I might flip back and forth to this a little bit. Yeah.
Pretty good. It's hot in here.
We have the
It's up to go into my office, and that one, if I open it, and it'll be immediate.
I don't like that.
I know.
there we go. Page got off mute for a sec. So some of the things that people were interested in were trails and having a variety of trails, different lengths, loops, and we see this in a lot of parks, and accessibility of trails. So people don't want to go and just do one back and forth thing. They want to do loops and all different lengths depending on how they feel that day. People wanted educational opportunities, interpretation. There's a lot of places where you have access to the water, access to wetlands, to the hot springs. So there's many kind of educational opportunities. There's also the history of this area is really interesting. So interpretation, I think, would be a big component. Having river overlooks, wildlife viewing, flexible green space, having the shade shelters for large gatherings were things that people talked about. Nature playground, public art, keeping with the nature theme, fishing access, and restored ecology throughout the site. And so you can see that in the plan, we have a trail that connects from the hot springs over towards the ponds. The ponds would be where we could have some restoration. Those were previously lined, so there's definitely an opportunity to improve the ecology, improve the access. You can see all of the different trail loops that we have connecting through the site. So there's a lot of different ways that you can make it through. And then I'll take you through some of the other aspects as well. And the trail, I think people really liked having the soft surface, more natural trail, but it can also be accessible. You can, if you do this kind of fine gravel correctly, you can make that feel soft, but also be hard enough for wheelchairs to use. This is a view of just a perspective view of what that open space part would like. There's the ponds and the river. So you can see all the trails that kind of wind through there. So there's really a lot of space. There's wetlands over here that would be preserved, and a lot of space that would be preserved or restored. One of the aspects that people were interested in was, having some flexible green space. So this shows the park, but highlighting that green space. And so this might just be a mowed area, not like, athletic fields or anything, but just a space where people can gather, kids can run around, you can have events. Wildlife viewing was one of them, and we had some pretty interesting ideas for some viewing blinds and raised boardwalks through the trees. So it could be create some really unique spaces, but still being sensitive to the land, being able to get people up where they might be able to see some wildlife, which is very likely around here, and see down to the river, see bird habitat, get a unique vantage point, but then also being able to maybe get people in wheelchairs up on an elevated walkway. Just benches and that contemplative spaces throughout the trail system, river overlooks. There's definitely throughout this system the opportunity for that education and interpretation, and maybe even some outdoor classroom space. We had identified it down here kind of central to the ponds. And public art, kind of environmental art installations. One that I know people were really interested in were some of these willow weavings that you've probably seen in a few places, but it's more of that nature art interface. And I think that's something people were really interested in and reflected upon, is like, this is an open space park. We want things to be really natural. We want to enjoy the space without developing it too much and restoring it as much as we can. So here's where the parking and kind of entrance into the open space would be, and there could be kiosk and interpretation there as well. Because there's plenty of these loops, having a fitness loop where there's actual outdoor fitness stations along there was something that people were interested in.
Awesome.
And even with that, that can still be fairly natural materials, nature playground. It doesn't have to be the bright colors. It can be kind of a controlled and safe space for kids, but it can also blend into the surroundings really well. And then just thinking about this kind of gathering space for future community art, exhibits, there could be snow sculptures, whatever it might be, other things that keep it going all year round while you're accessing the hot springs. And really it's just like, you want to get the kids out in nature. You want them to have that connection. And so that was a really big piece of it as well. That's
Great, Walker. Thank you. This is so interesting to look at. Yeah, it's just incredible. Do you have an idea of how many people you talked to over that process?
I would say it was hundreds. There was really good attendance at a lot of the meetings. So, and we had people at the library, and people would come in throughout the day. We went out to Wilson. We went to events. We tried to get a good amount of people, go to where the people are, and so I think we did get really good attendance, and the process was not short. It wasn't just a quick 6-month process. It was multiple years. So, throughout talking about the history of it and the people who knew the site and used the site before, to people who are just learning about it and people who are just come to the area, and all the opportunities. I think we were really able to reach a broad cross section and reach a lot of people for that size of community.
Wonderful. Thank you. Each of you touched on a little bit some other projects that you've worked on in the past, both hot springs or park or both. I'm wondering if you can each give me an example of a project like that you've worked on that has had a really positive impact on the surrounding community, and why that stuck with you and why that project succeeded in the way that it did.
Yeah, there's a lot of projects that come to mind. There's probably an emerging project in outback Queensland that I think it's a good example because it's quite a long way away, from major cities. So in order to drive from some of the major cities on the East Coast, we'd be talking about at least 6 to 8 hours to drive. So it's a long way out. And that area has had challenges with drought, and it's traditionally a farming region, so the economy is geared that way. But there's an emerging project, a hot springs development, that will, I guess, create a space for the local community to come together, but also attract other people from the broader region or even interstate to come and visit it. And of course, that has ripple effects for people then to be able to visit other businesses within the local community. It's situated on their river, similar experience to this. So it's got that connection. There'll be walking trails and things. But what I see happening there is that they'll be able to have, they have different festivals and events through the year. So potentially that will be able to link in with the hot springs. There's a space where a pop-up outdoor cinema could be possible. So that could be really fun. I mean, I'm not sure what that would look like out at Astoria, but, you like to think that ideas come from the community, and then, whether they're art groups, whether they're, groups that are passionate about conservation, school groups, that there's so many, things. And I think that openness, that the project is a space where people do have that sense of connection or ownership or custodianship of, then that creates a culture that we know we can have an event at Astoria. And there's probably one other event that it's a great connector. So we can connect at the local level, but there's an event, and I was mentioning it earlier, and I'll put it in the chat, but it's called World Bathing Day. So on June 22nd each year, we invite people around the world to take photos of themselves relaxing, bathing in hot springs, mineral baths, sea baths, saunas from different parts of the world. So, the people in this conversation connected to the community could do that, as long as the space is open and safe on that day. And if it's not, then just post photos of when you have visited there. But I think that community sense of ownership and that the bridges that it creates is something that it's going to grow more. I've seen it happen in so many other places. So it just depends on the creatives and the people within the community to guide it how they want to.
Cool. Yeah, I have a couple that definitely apply, and really they're more parks than on the hot springs side, but they do have a lot of similarities. One of them is Esther Simplot Park in Boise, Idaho, and it might be a little smaller than Astoria, and it's more urban, but it has a huge community impact. It was an old gravel pit and construction dump, really neglected, underused space, and it's been turned into habitat and recreation. It has a focus area like Astoria, but their main focus is a whitewater park on the Boise River. So it has a draw already. It has something that draws people in. But really it's just a small part of the park. It has similar elements: trails, nature play, river access, flexible green space. And it is more of an open space park. But it does have that connectivity to the community and to nature. It's made the river more accessible. It's connected to the broader community with the trails. And it's been very, very successful and very well loved from the beginning, which I think, Astoria already is. And when the open space park is developed, I think you will have that truly unique space in the world where it has the potential to be an amazing park. But by the way, there's these hot springs in one of the most beautiful natural settings that you can imagine. So there's really so much going for it. And then another one I was thinking of is Northside Park in Denver. And it was actually an abandoned treatment plant. And it was brought back. We were able to save pieces of the existing plant and use them as sculpture throughout the park. But it was redeveloped and has really brought people a place to reconnect with nature in the middle of the city. And I know, we're talking urban versus rural, but it's like giving people a place where everyone can come. It's like anyone can come to the open space park and use it and get connected with nature. And I think that's something that really builds community and really improves the quality of life for the community.
Really great. Thank you both for that. Let's see if we have any questions popping up. And folks, please feel free to call out. This is the time where you can ask Matt and Walker any of your own questions. So please just feel free to speak up if you have any questions yourself.
This is Jean Day, and I have a comment. Maybe it'll blossom into a question, but I work with, I'm a senior, and I work with Age Friendly Jackson Hole, which is a grassroots organization here. And there are a lot of age friendlies around the United States, at least. And the focus of the group being helping to make our communities more accessible and inclusive for all ages and all abilities. That's the common thread across all of these organizations. Accessibility and inclusion for all ages and all abilities. And very happy to see everyone talking often about including everybody and making accommodations for those who are disabled or differently abled. That's seniors, that's a parent pushing a baby stroller, that's someone on crutches who just had ACL surgery. This is a busy outdoor community. We have a lot of people who are not just elderly, but walking around with a crutch. And anyway, so very glad to hear all of that inclusivity and all of the thoughts already about the hand railings and the ramps, and go for it. I love it. There is something called Nature RX, and I'll bet you've heard of it. It's become kind of a catchphrase, nature prescription, where here in the US, maybe it's elsewhere, but particularly here, so many kids were not getting outside, not just during the pandemic, way before the pandemic. Kids were just not getting outside like they used to. And a lot of us who grew up here, or at least spent a chunk of time here, remember Astoria as the place to go as kids. Little birthday parties, little swimming parties. Moms and dads would load kids in the van and off they'd go. And I'm really glad to hear that that's being retained, and that thought of the historical use is there and driving a lot of it. And then they're going to do this awesome park for 95 acres all around it, even better. So just thrilled to hear, and the mention of First Nations, love that. It just sounds like you guys have been around this block enough to have done a really good job for us and continue to do that. And I did want to say, just from my experience, I've helped with some park designs only as a volunteer grassroots person who's older herself. And I've sat on a lot of park benches, and I know that they can be comfortable or not. And some of them are designed to be not comfortable so that people don't really stay that long. But there are, and I know you guys are on top of it, but when you mentioned the fitness trail, I did want to say, I've seen installed, sure you've done it, all these natural ways to do fitness as you go down a trail. It doesn't have to be, like you said, I think it was you, Walker, the bright colored, powder coated enamel metal clanging and squeaking. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a tree stump that you stand next to and hold it for balance maybe, but you do, you know, this many push-ups against the tree stump. So there are natural ways to make a fitness trail. And anyway, it all, I'm glad you're not going to exclude anybody, and that on day one you've been planning for us. So nice to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's yeah, I think something like that is way more appropriate for Astoria. You know, is like helping direct people how to do some exercises, step ups on the boulder, or whatever it might be. But you know, it should blend with the surroundings out there. So yeah, I think accessibility is so important, and yeah, it's not everyone that is there all the time, but a lot of people are there at some point in their life. So you know, it's really important to be respectful of how people use that space and providing access for everyone. So thanks.
We have a question in the chat from Vanessa. Do you guys have any tips for first-time hot springers?
Walker, do you want to? I think you should start because you design the experience, so you've probably got flows of experience in mind.
I think you just got to get out there and try all the different pools, and hopefully there's more experiences for you. One trend that we're seeing is more like Astoria, where there's a number of pools with different temperatures and different views, different experiences really completely. And so, you know, when you go to these spaces, even if it's a larger pool and, you know, it's split up in different ways, just go try out all the spots and find your favorite space. I mean, it's pretty easy to enjoy the hot springs, so.
Thanks. Do we have any other questions? Or did you want to jump in there with your own tip?
Look, I'd just say if you know, if you're coming for a first time, particularly in this place, if it was me, I'd really recommend going for a short walk anywhere. It depends on your appetite, but somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. Warm up your body, and then get moving, and then come back, have a shower, jump into your pool, and as you know, Walker is saying, you know, find your temperatures and move around. The trick is not to feel like you need to be in pools the whole time. You might be in a pool for 10 minutes and then you might, you know, take a rest in, you know, sit on a seat or sit on the grass for, you know, a couple of minutes, cool off. So allow yourself to really soak into the space and move between the different experiences without rushing it. And then you'll get a feel for, you know, what you enjoy, what temperatures. Yeah, even allowing space at the end of just lying down on the grass or somewhere quiet, warm, comfortable, just to relax, you know, to even have a nap. So that it just helps you get the most out of the experience. You know, that's opposed to coming, trying and doing everything like you're doing a rush sightseeing trip, then you won't get the most out of it. So just take your time.
Bring your water bottle. Make sure you drink a lot of water, because it's hard to stay in there for too long if you don't stay super hydrated. And a lot of hot springs, you really can't stay in that long. You know, you might be there for an hour and that's enough, or that's more than enough. So I think Matt's right. If you are trying to stay there for a while, you got to take some little breaks, and you know, don't feel like you have to do everything. You got to come back, you know, a few times.
Elizabeth, did I see a hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Just more of a comment. I just wanted to compliment you guys on the great job that you're doing. And Walker, I think in the beginning, I heard that you haven't yet been to the hot springs since it opened, and you've clearly done so much work. So I just I wanted you to know that I've been a handful of times. It was wonderful. Everyone who's been says the same thing. And so just, I hope you feel good right now. And I'm sure you will when you visit. So thank you guys so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I've heard really good things, and I'm super happy to hear that. And I did get up there during construction when they were forming the pools, but then I did have some trips planned for the end of construction that got canceled. So yeah, I'm super excited to get up there, and it's been great positive energy from what I've heard. So I appreciate that.
Thanks. Thanks, Elizabeth. Jean, you asked in the comments if the pools and the bigger park area are expected to become a tourist destination. And I think I can actually speak to this one a little bit. And the answer to that is sort of yes and no, I guess. We're not in the business of turning anybody away. We're not going to say that tourists and visitors and out of towners can't come to Astoria. This is a space for everybody who passes through town or who lives in town to enjoy. With that being said, however, we are a very community focused organization, and you'll see, we're just starting off now, but you'll see as we launch our programs and we get going with engaging the community and the design for the larger park, you'll see that we are really going to focus our efforts on engaging our local community and making sure this is a refuge for locals here in town. Any other questions?
I'm Susan. I just want to say how thrilled I am that this is happening. I grew up in Wyoming, and our family has a cabin in the Hoback Rim. So we went to Astoria many, many times, starting in the 70s. And plus I'm just a hot springs freak. So I now live in Washington State, but try to get to Wyoming every summer. Unfortunately, haven't made it the last two. But I've been donating and making donations for Christmas gifts for our whole family because we grew up there. And I can't say enough how excited I am about this and just the wonderful job you've done. I have a nonprofit that's environmentally focused around orcas in the ocean, but I am equally in love with the Wyoming environment and the habitat there. And I'm just so excited you've done such a good job of having the place be so special and be educational, as well as having the hot springs coming back. It's just an amazing, amazing thing you've done. And I just want to thank you and say I cannot wait until I can get there. And I'm hoping maybe this summer, depending on COVID, but just thank you to all who've done such an incredible job.
Thank you so much, Susan. Yeah, we so appreciate it. And thanks for joining in on the call.
Yeah, I think that's what, I'm most proud of, is that we were able to bring this amenity back to the community, doing Trust for Public Land and the Astoria Hot Springs Park Conservancy and everything that Paige has done. And it was a community, seriously, a community effort to bring back this resource. And it took a lot of work from everyone and to get it constructed, and there's still more to come is really exciting. So.
Thanks. Well, first of all, thank you to everybody who joined in, and a huge thank you to both you, Walker and Matt, for such insightful answers and just speaking about your own experiences that relate to both Astoria and spaces similar to it. We really can't thank you enough for joining in on this. So as many of you know, Astoria Park Conservancy is a donor-supported nonprofit organization. And as we look to the future, specifically this summer, we're working to create some really exciting education and wellness programs, as well as launch our Access Fund, which will further increase accessibility to this space for our low-income neighbors. And we're also working, as we talked about earlier, just to set plans for this community and wildlife refuge within the larger park. And we just think that this space is such an essential place for these connections that we've talked about tonight. So with that being said, our work is deeply rooted in community, and we really need donor support to uplift our mission here. So the folks that are calling in, if you're able, please head to our website and make a donation at astoriapark.org. And if you're not able, we just ask you to, share what we're doing, share our mission with your friends and family. And we so appreciate all of you being here tonight. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Good to see you, Matt.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. I hope that helps spread the word a little bit. But I mean, the feedback that you're getting towards the end there, obviously, the community is getting behind it. So, behind each one of those people is probably another 100 people, that are advocates for it. So hats off to you.